Cuando quiera.
Well, hello. Have you ever wondered how would why ¿Puedo volver a empezar? Perdón.
Editan, todo esto lo editan.
Hello. Have you ever wondered how should we approach the illegal immigration crisis? Well, my name is Juan Pablo Guzman, and today I will moderate this debate that should cover it. Participants shall begin by presenting themselves and their take on the topic in a time of 4 minutes. Please explain your ideas and thesis with respect and formality. You may go first.
Alright, well, I'm Elias Hernandez. I am currently in favor of the situation of illegal immigration. Starting off, the first and probably the biggest argument is the economic contributions and fiscal benefits of it. Undocumented immigrants, they play a crucial role both in the US and the Mexican economies. In Texas, for example, a study by the Baker Institute found that every dollar spent on public services for undocumented immigrants collects in revenue $1.21, totaling a net benefit of approximately $421 million. This was taken in the fiscal year of 2018. The individuals contribute significantly to industries such as agriculture, construction, services, often filling labor shortages that native-born workers are less inclined to occupy. Furthermore, undocumented workers contribute to the social security system without receiving benefits. The Social Security Administration has reported that undocumented immigrants and their employers contribute approximately $6 billion annually on payroll taxes, which are not refunded to them upon retirement. On the second point, I have humanitarian and moral considerations. The deportation of individuals who have established their lives in the U.S. can lead to severe humanitarian consequences. Examples are a case published by The Guardian in which a 4-year-old Mexican girl suffering from short bowel syndrome was in the process of deportation. Her doctors warned that without continued access to specialized medical care in the U.S., she could die within days. So such situations portray the moral obligation to protect vulnerable individuals. Also, the cultural enrichment and social diversity. We see states like Chicago and Portland, in which undocumented immigrants enrich the culture of the U.S. and Mexico through their traditions, languages, and perspectives. They contribute to a more diversified society that values multiculturalism and inclusivity. The legal and constitutional principles, of course, which are backed up by the U.S. Constitution, guarantee equal protection under the law. Denying undocumented immigrants access to legal protections and due process can be seen as a violation of fundamental rights. For instance, a U.S. district judge recently blocked the Trump administration from suspending Biden-era migrant parole programs,
You have 1 minute left.
emphasizing the need to adhere to established legal processes in immigration matters. Finally, international solidarity and global responsibility. Both the U.S. and Mexico have international obligations to uphold the human rights established by the UN and provide refuge to those fleeing persecution or seeking better opportunities. Embracing undocumented immigrants aligns with these commitments and demonstrates a compassionate approach to global challenges.
Well, I mainly talk about the economic role in immigration, the humanitarian crisis, moral implications it may have, and the way it can enrich not only economy but also culture. Yeah. Thank you very much. You may go.
My name is Solo Fernandez and I'm in favor of immigration, mainly because of the issues that many people in the US think that these immigrants go to the US to bring bad stuff like drugs and problems, when in reality it's not true. These people are coming away from the country because they're leaving economic problems from the country, wars, and other issues. Like these people fleeing violence, poverty, and disasters should not be punished for safety. And one argument is that recently, in these recent years, thousands of migrants from countries like Honduras, Salvador, Guatemala flee to the US not only to find a better life, also to find a job and be like a better, like, because in their country there's really bad things happening at the moment. And then another thing is that during 2010, there has been a recently Haitians immigrants because in 2010, an earthquake hit Haiti, and then these people were forced to migrate to the US to find a better life. And also another argument is the economic contributions that these people think. If you ask yourselves, who does the hard jobs in the US, many people say, oh, it's our people, when reality is that's not very true. It's around 50% of the hard work, like agriculture, construction, all the like the hard work done in the US are made by the immigrants. And according to the Pew Research Center, approximately 50% of farm workers in the US are documented immigrants. And in Mexico, a large number of immigrants, both internal and international, work in the construction industry, agriculture, and domestic services. So these people have a big impact on how the economic works in the US. So if you literally decide to kick these people out of the country, the whole economy in the US will drop down. And my third argument is that immigrants enrich society because these immigrants not only they bring like hard work and labor to the US, they also bring skills, perspective, and cultural richness that benefit everyone in the US. For example, according to a report by the National Association of Entrepreneurship, immigrants funded a significant proportion of business in the US, and it's estimated about 30% of small businesses in the US. So these people are owners of 30% of the small business in the US, so they have a lot of impact in how it works. And then my fourth argument is the legal system is broken. The legal immigration system is slow, costly, and unjust for these people. The process for the immigration is a mess right now. It's really slow, it's really expensive, and many of these people don't have the money to afford it, and often impossible to those who most in need. If the legal system is accessible for everyone, then criticizing people for seeking a better life outside of it is not really hypercritical in my opinion. For example, in the asylum process in the US, the application process in the US can take 2 years. In 2020, the US Citizenship and Immigration Services had a backlog of over 1 million pending asylum applicants. So it's really slow, the process for these people. So that's why many people would rather jump illegally to skip this process. And my last argument is that the right to seek a better borders should not block basic human rights, because these are people, no matter where they come from. The right to seek a better life should not be restricted to anyone. And migration is a basic human right. We cannot allow borders to trap people in suffering, to deny them from the opportunity to get a better life. And a real example is when I studied the University Declaration of Human Rights, Article 13 of the UN Declaration establishes that everyone has the right to move freely and seek asylum in another country. In conclusion, the legal migration system is just like, it's not a political issue, it's a humanitarian and economic issue. These people are looking for a better life, they migrate.
Sorry, Well, he mainly talked about, also economic, ethical implications, but also he made a big insight into empathy towards these immigrants in respect of their rights, even in the context of bureaucracy and the way this works. Okay, well, thank you very much.
Next. So the pro party is basically mainly advocating the argument of that humanitarian need and the global efficiency of the bureaucratic process of legalization and citizenship of illegal immigrants. Am I guessing is correct? That is a suggestion. Not an issue. I am not saying that I am against the idea or the efforts of aiding the needed. We cannot avoid that, and we should not avoid that. But problem is, it is such a huge amount of magnitude of people that you are looking to help. Easily an estimate of 10 million people from 1924 to 2021. Easily, very easily. And historically, there have been many instances of where this caused a lot of xenophobia. I am not proud of it, nor do I endorse it, but it's an issue that happens with all the general population. if we want to introduce the immigrants, then we must also make sure that the safety of everyone. I'm not implying the safety of introducing a foreign dangerous element, but I'm saying that the introduction of the sudden, just as previously said, enormous magnitude of illegal immigrants, it's going to cause a rift between classes of cultural and social. For example, in 1860 was the Irish immigration of 5 million. This increase in xenophobia led to, I would say, mainly two incidents. In 1834, a mob burned down the Ursuline convent at Charlestown, Massachusetts. 1884, rioters burned down two churches over the dispute of what version of the Bible to teach in public schools. These two instances were mainly in the clash of, although they were both Catholics or Christians, depends on what you say, but that is not the topic of this debate. They enter in conflict due to these differences. I do believe that these differences can be set apart and create harmony, but we cannot do it through the mainstream of illegal immigration, not through the skipping the process, not through the avoiding all those who are already, and believe me, are hundreds and thousands that are already working towards the legal citizenship, or just the legalization that allows them legal residence within the country. How much time do I have?
1 minute and 3 questions.
I will also add that there is this and we're going to resend me that.
Alright. Well, we mainly talk about problems and the possibility of aid to immigrants and concerns regarding the impact of such problems, especially in nowadays circumstances.
Yeah.
Although, yeah, you may.
For the, well, immigrants, illegal immigrants are usually victims for in the aspect of laboral exploitation, human trafficking, and other abuses. Legal status of hardworking rights, the immigrants are usually confronted in other media, like for example, they confront they confront other abuses, like for example, well, you say, for example, 2.4 million immigrants are harvesting fruit and vegetables in Europe. According to the latest statistics, they represent 1 in 4 people employed in the sector. But the report highlights an assisting population of immigrant workers, regular European Union and labor and human rights law in many countries still. In other regions that expose the exploitation of laboral rights are in the Middle East and North African region, expose the condition faced by migrant workers who are victims of trafficking, trafficking and exploitation trafficking in the Middle East. Data compiled from interviews with 162 victims reveals alarming trends. 100% of workers and victims revealed their passport withheld, and 87% were continued to the workplace, 76% had their wages, and 61% were victims of physical abuse. The last thing is that armed conflict and economic instability causes the Middle East and North African region create the perfect environment for modern slavery.
Thank you very much. Basically, talked a lot about the implications in crime, the perpetuation of already existing crises and struggles in the country in question, mainly caused by illegal immigration. Okay.
Well, international migration has been one of the most discussed topics in sociology and politics in the last few years. And like you said, it involves a lot of the humanitarian side. I think it's something that it's very relevant when talking about people that are running away from the country for any reason. However, it involves the law and the politics of the country that they are entering. It is not something that we can avoid entirely. And since the 17th and 18th century, there's been constant work in the laws and politics that relate to the immigration. So there are like several options for people who want to go to another country. I think they mentioned that there is like the option to get the citizenship, which is probably the one that people desire most, and also to just the legalization, which means that you can live legally in the country and get like a residency and some rights without, not the same rights as a citizenship, but you can live legally without all the problems that involve just jumping to the country. There is also the option to get like a work visa, where you can just ask the permission to work in the country, which is a process that is way easier than the citizenship. So that way we can keep the families together in the country without the need of deporting, and people can live in the country without the rights of the citizenship, which is something that only Americans get. And for example, Matt O'Ryan, who is the director of research at the Federation of American Immigration Reform, said that rewarding bad behavior only encourages more bad behavior, and much of our current immigration situation is directly attributable to a series of amnesties that began with the Immigration Reform and Control Act of 1986. This means that rewarding the people who cross the border illegally with citizenship or all the rights that get the citizens of the said country can only encourage more people to do that illegally and not respecting the law that people have been following for decades. So this is a very important part of the topic, that there is a law and there is like that keeps order and can help to just follow all the processes for people who want to go to the other country with all the attentions that need to follow the rules of the country that you want to enter and live. There is also the part about the enforcement of human trafficking, smuggling, and criminal activity in the borders, which is something that has been discussed too, and it has been growing in the last few years. But there is 1 minute left. There is a constant work in immigration politics, and also about taking care of the criminal activity on the process of immigration. So this is a phenomenon of criminality that has been eradicated in the last few years. For example, with the Commission proposed a regulation to reinforce Europol's role in the fight against migrant smuggling and human trafficking in Europe. This is an example of how there is a constant working actualization of the laws that are related to the immigration and the borders to avoid all human trafficking and make the immigration process safer for everyone, including the citizens of the country that they are entering and the immigrants themselves.
Okay. Well, basically, you talk about conflict between philanthropic concerns regarding status of those immigrants, but also the way it may contradict the preservation of law and its social and historical function of such law. Well, so just to wrap up this first segment, here is a lot about the economic role of immigration, the way it can help a country, how we should or we must attend these crises with a humanitarian perspective. Here we talk mainly about the problems and the possibility of aid to these immigrants in a realistic way, and the way it can affect culturally, or even to crime, for instance, and the way this may have a conflict with the laws of this country and the way they're made and why are they made this way. So now we can go to the next part, which is basically rejoinder, counter arguments, and answers to the thesis presented by all the other people. You may proceed in a time of around 3 minutes. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So now we shall begin this way.
Just another round. Just another round for you.
Just answers you may have to the other arguments and counter arguments.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I want to get deeper in the part of legalization because there are several ways that the legalization without the citizenship can be implemented in the immigrants. For example, one way that has been discussed is the undocumented immigrants who have been in the country for more than 10 years could apply for legalization without a path to citizenship. So this is a measure that the law can take to more efficiently target a smaller population, while at the same time sending a message to all the immigrants who plan to cross the border legally that there are several ways that they can live legally in the country, get the residence, and get several rights to just get a good job, get a good life in the country that they're trying to access, without the need of trying to get a citizenship, which is usually the part that takes the most time, like you mentioned. It can take a long time to get that, but there are other options that have been discussed, and it's a constant work of implementing these solutions for everyone. So another option is, like I said, to pay a fee to obtain a work permit that requires free-based renewal, allowing them to work in the U.S. legally and also travel abroad and return to the U.S. and so they can participate legally in American society. This is, according to a study, most of the undocumented immigrants will choose this path instead of more expensive path to citizenship based on data from the IRCA. This means that people are actually willing to. There are several cases of people who have lived in the country legally for a long time. So these type of options can give a solution to all this community of Hispanic people who live in the U.S., for example. They have been living there for years, and they can try to look for these options and just make a good life in the country. There is also.
Oh, sorry, I thought you had finished. You have 49
What?
seconds.
Okay. I think that's fine.
Okay, well, wait. Implementation of better justice reforms against illegal immigration, and not only like do not come to this country, but also do it legal, basically, which would be a good way of taking part in some of the critiques they said regarding bureaucracy and so on. Okay. Can we go now?
Yeah, especially in immigrant people, when they come to a country, different country, they usually avoid to integrate into the formal society. This can be foment creation of society groups when that they keep their own culture, own language, and their customs, and for it made this isolation made this isolation made that the mutual groups of the local people and the immigration people has distrust mutual and parallel groups. They make a difficult exchange of language and intercultural things. Well, in the case of the, I want to say that in the case of health service and education service, in the health service, when many countries of the has a plan for the immigrant people, but actually the reality is that there are limited resources that make actually make the resources and has a growing requesting in this public services. Well, and in the system public educative, I want to say that the children that come in the overload the educative system, and um, yeah.
So, basically, culture shock and struggle limited by struggle caused by limited resources. So, the implications it can have on other struggles, such as class struggle, if I got what you're trying to say. Okay, thank you very much. Moving on now.
My next argument is in the favor that, excuse me, that there is the need to go through the legal process of integrating or accepting the immigrants due to that by the same fact that they are illegal, it puts them in a vulnerable and exploitable situation or spot at the expense of malicious third parties. Prime example would be that going back to the great Irish immigration of the 18th, and specifically 1840s, there was a buying of votes previous to an election. This came by offering naturalization papers, or better said, at the moment, the citizenship papers for these immigrants. What happened was that prior to the elections, these were offered, they were offered to be obtainable free of charge. The Irishmen didn't need to pay. And it was extremely easy to obtain them. The tests or the processes were with not many questions and were supervised by friendly judges who were in favor of manipulating the election. Not only this, there's the issue of amnesty involved in a process of, not in the process, in the issue of illegal immigration. There was this big economic crisis in Mexico in 1982, producing a great amount of financial insecurity. In turn, there was a big wave of immigration towards the USA. This caused a lot of grief, a lot of issues. You do not need to just think a lot about it to imagine the impact that would happen in the USA. The problem mainly erupted after January 1, 1982, because there was then, even by IRCA, a full pardon to all of the ones that immigrated prior to this day. They were granted amnesty. Therefore, they were not needed to be processed into deportation back to Mexico, or needed to process into acquiring legalization. This, in turn, caused an exploiting or parting point of what turned out into the big debate of the illegal immigration in the USA, even topics of that we most mainly know between a lot of Latin American immigration.
Thank you very much. Basically, talk about how these philanthropic concerns regarding these immigrants could be also avoided by avoiding their immigration, right? So yeah, that's quite interesting. Now, people in favor, and you may now proceed if you want to begin.
Well, as spoken by the opposition, cultural shock, cultural clashes are obviously a thing when dealing with illegal immigration. Nevertheless, as mentioned before, there are several states which already live in cultural harmony with illegal immigrants. There are the well-known establishments of albeit incidents like the 1884 case, which was during a different constitution. Social differences are also kind of inconsequential here, for the laboring force is still, in the most part, immigrants. The offering of citizenships is no longer a thing, so it also kind of does not uphold much relevance in this case. The exploitation of illegal immigrants is a thing. It cannot be avoided, for there is no legal way of dealing with it. Nevertheless, it can be helped. The mention of no legal rights in front of the law kind of creates that gray area where illegal immigrants look for side options to status. As offered by the opposition, the several permissions, the several alternatives to citizenship are a thing, but they do take too much time. The best example is the 10-year case I've mentioned. Living 10 years as an illegal immigrant is kind of a hard thing. And imagine, for instance, that this person would go and ask for a permission to live there, to work there, and be denied and also deported. It would be 10 years of his life wasted. Thank you. Also, permissions are too specific. Some of the working permissions require working permits prior to the solicitation of them. And finally, the law enforcement against immigrants is kind of against the Declaration of Human Rights, for the right to a household was declared by the UN a while ago.
Again, great, very interesting. If you basically talk about the possibility of coexistence between native people and immigrants, the way you guys have done historically, and the complexity of bureaucratic processes for legal immigration, which obviously creates an interesting contrast with what we're saying before.
So the problem right now is that the three of you are making arguments based on politics, and there's like other elements that can be involved in here. Like, for example, you said if these immigrants want to work, they should be getting a work visa, and then I recently just checked that typically ranging from getting a work visa is around several months to even exceed a year, which is a really long time for these people, because these guys are leaving their country in search of a job, and they don't have the money to. They don't have money for like to get a house. They don't have money to eat food. Imagine waiting months to get only a working visa. That's unethical. And then someone who I don't remember who mentioned about trafficking and exploitation. You make it seem like it's a problem coming from these people, but these people, the immigrants, they're the victims. They're not the ones causing these things. It should be the great majority of people who exploit and traffic people in the U.S. are people from citizens from the U.S. itself. What else? Implication of but yeah, like the things that you guys are mentioning are based on politics, but there's like human rights and economics, and there's like even programs in the US, like the DACA, which is the Third Action of Childhood Arrivals, which has shown how immigrants can successfully integrate into American society. Many of them have completed university, established careers, and contributed to social and economic well-being. Like the guys here focus on, okay, these guys, they come here and they bring problems, when in reality, when they come, they are getting involved into more problems. You know, they're trying to leave their own problems from their own countries, and then when they arrive to the US, they're getting exploited for work. They're getting trafficked. Like when those problems like
You have
many people think that these people bring problems to the US when in reality they're only in search of getting a better life. They don't want to cause problems. But when the great majority of these people, they get involved into problems, they get trafficked, and they get exploited for work. Many of them are like one way to illegally cross the border is that they had to pay someone and they go in a bus, in a truck, and then many of these people get scammed and they get dropped in the desert like that. It's really unethical. It's really unfair for these people.
Well, basically, restating this empathy towards immigrants and vulnerability they have, and the necessity of a certain correspondence between the ethical norm and the legal norm. You know, so basically, let's keep it this approach not only political but also ethical in the way they should consider. Okay. Well, before just finishing, I would like for you to say some basic conclusion about what you think with what you have heard and what you have said throughout this debate. Again, you will have 3 minutes. This Now, we may proceed first with the all in favor.
Well, for what was said and done, as the candidate mentioned and the moderator as well, the supporting of the rights of undocumented immigrants is not merely a legal or political issue, but also it is a sort of reflection of our shared humanity and both our countries' commitment to justice. Contributions from immigrants to economy, society, and obviously multiculturalism are invaluable. They are the protection of such value aligns with both moral imperatives and the legal principles established by the U.S. Constitution. By recognizing and supporting the rights of illegal immigrants, the values of compassion, equity, solidarity, among others, are upheld by a society that is embracing the arrival of new individuals, both in the United States as well as in Mexico. And finally, just to state the issue on the allowance of permissions and as well as citizenships, it is kind of it is a very long process, but it can be helped with certain adjustments or maybe exceptions in certain cases, such as mentioned before, the cases of people who need immediate medical attention, people who are in extreme poverty. Those people might be allowed to get special permissions that grant them to live morally well. And yeah, that's
Illegal immigration is not only a political issue, it's a humanitarian and economic issue. These people not only migrate because they want to, they have no other option list. They contribute to society in the US in countless ways, and they deserve it in respect to be welcome. Rather than criminalizing them, we should be working and reforming the systems in the US to make them more accessible and humane. It is, well, it's time to like stop building walls. We should be like working to making these people welcome in the US. Because the vast majority of these people, they're looking for better lives, a job, helping their family, because in their previous country, they were suffering from out of town on cartel, trafficking, drugs, etc. It is really sad to see how many people see these immigrants as the problem when these people are themselves the victims from all these issues.
Thank you very much.
And what will be next? As the property says, yes, the person that is the immigrant is innocent of the issue. However, I must say that this innocence is applicable to all involved, from the one that flees his country to the ones that are residing in that country. I am not antagonizing anybody. I want to help everybody, actually. But in order to do that, I need the power of the law, or that is the power of the government, and it is the power of the country and the people. The illegal trespassing, although it can maybe not be helped, or although maybe it cannot be entirely stopped, it does not help to the alleviation or the escalating of the issue. We need the power of the law in order so that we can register these immigrants. I need the power of the law so that I can guarantee the residents of the country that we are doing something that will not help only them, it will not help only the economy, it will help others that need help. Not only to mention that if I am just at the argument that the immigrants are fleeing from a situation to which we must be empathetic and help to them, I also allowed to move the resources of the country in order to absolve or resolve the problem in the residing country with the immigrant, although this may then be considered a violation of the rights of the ones that decide to stay in their country. I believe that illegal immigration is not exactly the issue that we're seeing in the humanitarian aspect, but in the aspect that it's
You got 1 minute left for your conclusion.
the aspect that it's overwhelming to everybody involved, and all the solutions that have been given until now are nothing but temporary patches. I want to find the most permanent and long-term solution. But for that to happen, I need a stop in the illegal immigration now. I am.
Well, just to conclude the ideas that we were suggesting, yes, there is it is very important to keep in constant evolution all the laws and the force that the countries like the U.S. have to implement in all the politics to be able to receive all the immigrants that are entering the country. At the same time, giving a full circle to all the law that there is around all these topics, at the same time respecting the human rights of the immigrants. This is something that is very important on the humanitarian side. I'm not saying that it's not important at all. Of course, it's super relevant in this topic because a lot of immigrants, are escaping the country, so they need to find a better opportunity somewhere else. And this constant work in the immigration politics is something that I think can be a solution in the future when working in these discussions. However, it is very important to follow the law and the rules to keep an order in the country and also give a fair treat to the residents of the country that is receiving the people. And all the problems that come with the illegal immigration is not something that people are bringing. It's more of a consequence of this phenomenon. And for example, all the thing about the reducing of the wages of work is something that I didn't talk about here, but I think it can come relevant when talking about the work that the immigrants bring to the country. It's something that they have the rights to get, the work, the residency, all the living and all the rights. It's something really, really important. However, following the politics is something very important. So it's more about finding a way that can help both sides, where the rights are followed, the law is still considered at the same time people are receiving a fair treatment and they are getting their rights, like all their rights respected. So I think it's about finding that middle of the road point and trying to give everyone a fair treatment.
Great. You may say your conclusion.
Well, I want to say that legal immigration, you say a point that there is not a problem, specifically, but it's hard to be to see the people that comes from other countries dying in travel and pass dangerous routes that has a very long of people and bodies behind them. I want to say that I'm I want to say that I'm not against in the point that the people that come in the country and work and give to their families implement the money or a base for their families. But I want to say that I'm against in the aspect that the people sometimes do the things are in do the very dangerous things. Not of all of them, but sometimes they bring their culture and ¿cómo se dice para?
Exchange? Sure.
They turn off the old culture of the are living in their country, and they forget the country that brings a resident of the country. But I want to say that a lot of
That's it? Okay. Well, I think the debate was really interesting. I think the great insights from each speaker, both sides. It's what a very interesting topic, quite interesting, in fact. And so I think we can now proceed to a more critical way of seeing and analyzing illegal immigration. So thank you very much. I think you should applaud.